Hello and welcome to an episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. So we have an old returning friend over here. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you very much.
And then we have your partner in
Mhm.
crime, Maria. How are you?
Hello, I'm good.
We're here to talk about the design. Sorry, this is called Design Meets Functionality, the WoltModalSheet story. I went through your Google presentation. It's quite
Mhm.
interesting. And how did you guys manage to have animation within Google Sheets or Google presentation? What
I
is it?
think I just used Marsha's skills. She provided me uh, gifts. GIFs. I think she used Adobe After Effects, right, Marsha?
Yeah, we placed GIFs there, and that's how we use animations.
Ah, I see. Maybe we can get kind of talking about the sheet, right? So when I say in the
Mhm.
sheet, this is called the Walt modal sheet. It kind of is a big
Yes,
mouthful.
Volt
Why don't we
models.
kind of back up a little bit? What is Walt exactly? Walt is the name of the company both of you work at, right?
We are the service that provides to deliver everything, to your pocket, in your pocket. Çağatay, you had it better.
I had it better. Yeah, I presented several times. So it's a delivery for everything. So using the Volt mobile app, you can order from restaurants, from retail stores, from flower stores. So it's expanding. You can even order Christmas tree. Yeah,
Christmas tree.
yeah. You can also even order Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Like all times of the year or just only around Christmas time?
I mean, depends on the retails that provides this retail stores.
I think it's really also has like a delivery component to it, right? So very much like there's a delivery component to it, right? We have outside people delivering things.
Yes.
So you have
So it
contractors,
has
right?
Courier partners.
courier partners. So usually people outside Europe doesn't know it, but it is active in 25 countries, uh,
Mm-hmm.
many European countries, and Israel, Japan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kazakhstan, yeah, and many more European countries.
And how long has this been going on for? I mean, how long has this company been around for?
2015, I guess. It was a startup in Helsinki.
Now, when the company first started, were you guys using Flutter from the beginning? I mean, I think you just started this position recently, right?
When Volt was only working with restaurants, we had native iOS and Android apps, and then native iOS tablet app for restaurants, and also a React Native app for couriers. And then when Volt expanded to retail, we started a new app because retail and merchants have totally different needs. And we had to provide something for retail people working in the retail stores. So we provided a mobile app that is used for picking and packing the orders, picking from the shelves and making it ready for courier partners. So this app started from scratch using Flutter. It was experimental. It worked pretty well, and then Volt expanded to many countries. So there was this need for making the apps that restaurant use available for also Android. So earlier, when Volt was smaller in less countries, it was working very fine. Restaurants, they were eager to buy iPad tablets. And then when company expanded to many other countries, it cost more to buy an iPad just to accept orders. So it is like buying a Porsche and just going to stores, retail stores to get something. There is no need to pay so much money just to accept orders. That's why we also now have an option to use Android devices for our restaurant owners. And this new app actually now is for both meant for retail and restaurants.
For a company that's doing this kind of delivery work, I feel like you guys have a lot of I don't know, motion designers and really art kind of people, and that's something I don't really imagine when I think about products being delivered. So I'm going to also try another feature since we're being dangerous today. We have
Okay.
somebody in our crowd. I don't know if you can see that or not. Can you see that?
Yeah, Daria. I can see Daria.
Yeah, she's apparently eating sushi that was delivered
Oh
by
yeah.
Wolt.
Yeah, Daria, you had Daria as guest, right? Remember?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
So it's interesting that that the about the sushi, right? So it's not just retail items; it's also food.
It started with food, then it expanded to retail.
So what's the bigger business then? Is it food or retail, or is this kind of a little bit of a mix of both?
I think food. Food is still bigger, right, Masha?
I think food is still bigger, yes. But we are planning to be everything, so we have quite ambitious plans to deliver everything. So not to stick to the food only.
What's one of the strangest things that Wolt delivers?
I think Christmas tree was one of those. And what else,
We have
Masha?
some sex
Do you-
toys delivered also.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
sex
not
toys
so
Yeah,
included.
not
strange.
some adult. Yeah.
I'm always curious about how you would deliver something like that, because I do see sometimes they put like, I don't know, do it open or be fragile or something like that. I'm guessing
Yeah, I
it
think,
must be in some discrete
On a
packaging.
box.
Well,
yeah,
obviously in a box, right? But
Ye-
I'm curious how
Yeah, it
public,
is discreet.
how clear
Yes.
is it? It's discreet, right?
yeah, I think privacy is the most important thing
Yes.
that the company is focusing on.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, this reminds me in school, like we used to write crazy things on packages and send them to people and watch them get embarrassed when they go pick it up in front of everybody else at the college campus. But kind of coming all back to this though, like I said, Walt. I mean, this kind of delivery company. Of course, it's not a new idea to be delivering items, right? Mostly food, but items to people, and these are all outside contractors, right? So they're all just freelance workers.
It depends on the country. For example, with Germany, we have contracted workers with Germany, and in other countries it is for this the system that you said, like people can become an independent entrepreneur as a they can have their own company and then do this.
So they could be actual full time workers.
Yeah.
Now the app that I mean, they must have their own app, right? So is it two different apps within the same store?
Uh, well, it's one app. So we had two different apps. The first one was a native iOS tablet app, native only iOS. And then we deprecated this app, Sunset. Now we have one app that is serving to both retailers and restaurants. So we edit the missing features. There is now one Flutter app that does its jobs very well.
And then our courier partners, they're using a courier partner app. So it's a different product that they are using to deliver. So we have a consumer app, we have merchant app, we have courier app. When people think of Wolt, they think only consumer app, but we actually We have a variety of different products that we are working and developing under one roof.
So there is a separate app for the courier.
Yes, and it's React Native.
Yes.
Ooh, how does
Yeah.
a company that have Flutter and really into Flutter also dare to have a React Native app side by
That's a
side?
very good question because Volt has its past before Flutter was very common. And well, we needed something cross platform that works. And at the time, it worked with React Native. And then in 2020, we started experimenting with Flutter and it was success. So now we are considering to see what we are going to do with React Native. Most probably, we are gonna deprecate it, but it can be native or Flutter. We will see.
How has it been working with Flutter? Is the company leaning towards going more Flutter, or is it still an evaluation stage?
I can say it this way that we started this project with two people. Now it is nine developers, and we are hiring. Yeah, so
Oh,
it's expanding.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Just only on Flutter, right? The 9 people.
Yeah, well, we actually got the iOS developers from the app that we deprecated, and they started learning Flutter. So it's both now iOS native app developers and then Flutter developers like me. Well, I have a native Android background as well.
Okay. Now, I do have a question. Let's kind of go back to the main topic, right? You wanted to talk
Yeah.
all about WoltModalSheet. I mean, yeah, so I do remember that Flutter has some type of sheet. It's called a bottom sheet, right? It's not a modal sheet. So you're taking a modal and combining it with the bottom sheet, and you made a Wolt modal sheet. Now, where did the idea come from?
I think we can start with what is modal, what we mean by modal, because modal is something that prevents interaction with the thing behind it. So when we consider about modal roots is preventing the interaction between the root behind it. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with the root concept of Flutter, but it is really based on abstraction, and there is root, which is the very very abstract class, and then there is overlay root, which is an abstraction for navigators overlay, and then there is transition root, and then model root, and then these are all abstract. But then there is page root and pop-up root. So page root replaces entire screen, and pop-up root is overlaying over the current room, but still preventing the interaction. And why we didn't want to go with Volt model bottom sheet. Actually, it started with bottom sheet, and then I can give this more information because, as I said, this Flutter app started for retails, and for retails we needed only a mobile phone. It's small phone, right? You just need to use it to pick the orders and prepare it. But restaurants, it's usually in kiosk mode. It needs a bigger screen to accept and manage orders. So when we needed to support larger screens for the Flutter app, we needed to find a solution for bottom sheets, because using bottom sheets for white screens is a problem. Then we came up with this UI component. It becomes a dialog in large screen and a bottom sheet in smaller screen. So that's why we don't want to constrain it only with bottom sheets. So depending on the screen size, it is responsive.
Yeah, I did see that, right? I saw that in your one of your demos, right? When you have a, like you said, desktop app, it's really like a modal, and then as
Yeah.
you make the screen more narrow, then it turns to a bottom sheet.
Yeah. But what is modal in this sense is that both bottom sheet and dialog, they are modals because they are blocking the interaction with the root behind them. So the modal type can be bottom sheet, dialog, or a side sheet. We are currently not supporting the side sheet. Only it is transitioning between bottom sheet to dialog depending on the screen size constraints.
Now, when do you plan to actually have the side sheet? And what is a side sheet? So it's just something that comes out of the side, right?
Yeah, it is actually a material design UI component. You can go to material website and you can see a side sheet.
I may just do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have an actual demo that we could see or no?
Actually, it's also, if you go to PubDev for the model, you can see it, but I can also show it from my slides. I can share my screen. So as you can see here, the bottom sheet transitions to dialog when the screen gets smaller in a desktop app.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is only one of the features that has this model, the UI component supports. There are more features. So for example, if we go, it's multi-page. This depends on the use case, and it's not very common component. And when this is not done well from design point, it might be really difficult for user to engage, because when you change between the pages of the model, it can jump quickly. And then now what we have is, thanks to Masha, we have this smooth motion, pagination motion between pages, which Masha can explain better than me. And then we support built-in scrollable. If the content in the model is larger than its height, it automatically scrolls. You can scroll. And the pages in this model can be dynamically set depending on the user. It supports both imperative and declarative navigation, meaning that, for example, in Flutter SDK, when you use show modal sheet, you are imperatively adding a new route to the navigator widget. But you can also manage your navigation stack declaratively. And as you can see in this screen, we changed the bottom sheet pages using the web address bar of the browser. So this is only possible with Navigator 2. And finally, we support this motion design, page scrolling, and pagination.
Okay. I mean, where did the idea for this come from?
I think the main idea why we decided to do the pagination is that, you know, when you think of the user and the user experience, when they want to stay within a flow, it's much better to stay within one model and not switch between different models, especially when they go back and forth. So we decided to keep the flow in the same, like, how to say, envelope, so to say, and try to make it smooth within versus dismissing one and opening another, even though they are the same sub steps of the main flow. So that's why we decided to go with this, from the motion perspective, we decided to go with this flow.
There must be more than one way to solve this problem, right? So how come the idea of combining the modal and the sheet came together though? Like was this actually somebody else previously did this in the past and you drew from that, or was it something that was just totally brand new that you just kind of came up with as you were kind of trying to figure out how to solve this problem?
So the bottom sheet is widely used, and I think it might be depending on the function of the task of what you want to do. So if it's a big flow, it's a main task within the user flow, maybe bottom sheet wouldn't be the most perfect candidate to use. But if it's a smaller task, for example, in our case, it was something that if you start picking items and you say, oh, the user, this person wants two, loaves of bread, but we only have one, then you can either say that if they prefer substitution, then you go to the substitution and start selecting from them, or you might say only one, and then the user will get refunded for another. So that pick and flow was kind of a subflow of selecting the main flow components. That's why the bottom sheet is used. But it always depends on the UX of the whole journey of the user. If it's something way more significant, for example, in the consumer app, when you open the venue, we think that it's a very significant flow, and that's why we still use the full screen, and then you start scrolling with the venue. It's not the bottom sheet, but when you open the items within the venue, there's not that much you can do with that. You can add it, or you can select some different options and then dismiss it. So we decided to go with the bottom sheet there because that subflow wasn't so like big in a way.
I mean, the main thing I have some thoughts about is that a modal, a sheet, they are very much like a one. I mean, I don't know how to best say this. I almost want to say like a one-time use, right? They ask you yes or no, or it's always a typical. You're going to close this window. Do you want to save your work? It's a one-use situation, but instead you're using it as it could be a journey, right? I mean, it's very simple. I think in the presentation there's the can you confirm we're going to come deliver this thing at this time? You can say, okay, I confirm. Or no, not good. I want to choose a different time. And that makes sense because that's a typical flow, right? If it's not okay, then when is okay? But usually that would be a page navigation instead of okay, let's kind of keep in this flow, right? I still feel a little bit strange when I think about it.
Yeah. The idea is that you still want to be connected to the main flow. Your main flow is accepting order. You can either say yes, no, and then close your bottom sheet, and then there is a more complex there's more complex alternative flow which you can either choose between predefined times or you can use a custom time. This is why we don't really want to bother the user with all the information in one place if they don't need it. And in many cases they will just confirm it, but in some cases they will need to arrange the time, adjust the time, and then we want to take them in a bigger screen, so in a bigger sheet, so that they can choose their time, but still with the relevant content only. And then when they do their job, they are still back to the main flow, which is accepting the order.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. And like I said, you don't want to go on too far, right? You just want to kind of keep in the same context, as I guess we
Yes,
can call it.
this is very important
Exactly.
rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, Masha can tell better because she is mainly studying about this human perception from design. Maybe Masha, you can tell better. Yeah.
So what Çağatay was saying is that it's very important that this modal or bottom sheet, it's something that we need to be aware that you can easily dismiss it by clicking outside of it. So we shouldn't place a very much big significant flow within that, because people can just, by mistake dismiss it, and their changes would be unsafe. So that's why, for example, Çağatay was mentioning that it's only used for small moments like accepting orders or changing the time when how much it takes you to prepare that particular order. But if it would be a flow of maybe 10-15 steps, we would reconsider of using the model itself, just due to the fact that it might be, people can just close it by mistake and then they have to go back and start it again, going through this 10 different steps.
You're talking about the router before, right? That actually interacts, right? Using the routing solution. Is that to a particular router or all kinds of routers this can work?
You mean from navigation point, Flutter navigation point?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Flutter bottom sheets that is coming with the SDK, it is called like using show modal bottom sheet. It's a static method, and I think it's a top level function. So inside this function, if you go inside to the API, you will see that there is a call to navigator dot push when you call this method. And this is imperative navigation, which is we can call even like navigator 1.0. There is nothing like navigator 1.0. But when I say navigator 2.0, which is declarative, so in that case, we don't do imperative calls like show this, push this route, or pop this route. Instead, depending on the app state, the model can be visible or not. And this works with the router API, this Navigator 2. That's why this open source library comes with two solutions. You can either call WoltModalSheet.show, or you can use the custom route that is offered by this library inside your router delegate with Navigator 2. Navigator 2 is a very complex topic, but it's my favorite topic.
I mean, it's definitely complex, and it's something I wanted to get more into someday. I would love to have a whole Navigator 2.0 kind of discussion, but most of the people I find to talk about it don't really want to talk about it because they talk about it too much. This is what I usually hear.
Yeah.
But I would kind of also like to go back into the design because that's something that I think that we never really talk too much about as Flutter developers, right? And we were kind of talking a little bit before. So it is your name pronounced Maria or no? Because it's written as Maria. That's what I always see. Is it pronounced as Marsha? Is that what I
It
keep
is,
hearing?
yeah.
It's Maria. Okay, maybe I hear it wrong.
Masha is a nickname.
Oh, it's
Sorry.
confusing me because I'm like, did I get the wrong name somewhere or what? Or you're
Okay,
talking about
sorry.
somebody
No,
else?
no. All are both are good. Yeah.
Okay. So Maria or Marcia, your title on here is
Yeah.
staff motion designer, right? And as we were talking about before, when it comes to delivering stuff, I'm always thinking, you know, I mean, it's not really like a motion kind of thing, right? I mean, sure, we're moving things around, but what exactly are you doing every day, right? Because obviously you're thinking about motion pictures, animation, that would be motion design, from what I understand. Maybe you can help
Yeah,
to understand, like, what are you actually doing at
yeah,
Wolt, and how are you involved so much with this sheet that we need to have you on the show, right? Can we talk more about that?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the biggest confusion comes from the word motion. As you mentioned, that you think, when you think of motion, you think of animation and traditional motion graphics. Sometimes once my parents even asked me like, "Are you doing the Disney animation?" And I was like, "No, no, no, it's completely different." Even though it has the roots in the traditional motion graphics and traditional animation, it already carved its own space as a discipline of, you can call it UX motion design. So it's not those small animations that you can think of, even though they are part of my work, but it's mostly all the behavior and flows that the user experience when they go through the application. So they have a flow, they have a goal. Let's say they want to buy a ticket, or they want to order food, or they want to book a cleaning service. So from the point of them opening the app, signing up, or going through onboarding, or even like starting to book, you experience the application through some motion. So the static screens, they kind of slide. If you click, something interacts with you. There's a feedback on as a system. It gives you the feedback also if, for example, something has been acknowledged or not. So everything, like the whole interaction of the system with the user, goes through motion. So all the transitions and animations there, this is how the user understands that, okay, this is something like the change has happened. And if we would just use instant screens, that wouldn't be very comfortable for the user. So because in real life we don't experience everything just happening out of the blue in a split second. People think, oh, it's magic, or something is like weird. So they have the same perception of actually expectations when they're using any digital product. And that's why motion is very important when you design something and build something as a digital product.
I mean, when I'm thinking about that sounds like a UX kind of thing, no? Is motion and UX, they're very similar in
Exactly,
this case?
exactly.
They are. Okay.
It is. I'm actually saying that motion in the product design, motion is more UX than UI. So it's more of why, not how frivolous the animation is, because the biggest role of motion is also to guide the user. So our users don't really notice that motion. So motion is noticed only when we want it to be noticed. For example, if you have something, if they haven't filled an input field, and there is something that, then we try them to notice with motion. Might shake something, put some like alert, and try to attract the attention. But in normal scenario, motion is a very invisible, so to say, component of the whole interaction. And sometimes, when we go through the screens with designers, so I am UX motion designer, we also have product designers. We go through the screens, we try to envision the flows, and we try to understand what kind of motion we need to put. And sometimes it's like, you might even have this guide, less is more. So sometimes we think, oh, is it too much? Is it too much motion that can distract the user from the goal? And sometimes we don't use motion at all. We don't animate stuff. Maybe it can happen very fast. But there's few conventions of where we should use it, and where maybe it's fine just to use very minimum and very brief animation, for example.
Now, when you're saying brief animation, what would be an example of a brief animation?
Yeah. For example, let's say, on the web you have a button that you hover or you click. So in order to it to be clicked, it's actually very quick. The timing of the clicked button is 150 milliseconds, because we don't want to put any attention to it to be clicked. We only want to indicate when you hover on it that it can be clicked. So it's just affordance. And then when you click, we want to indicate that you clicked it. But we don't apply like a wow bounding scaling, explosion, confetti out of the button just because it's clicked. We could apply it if it's maybe the end of the flow, let's say end of the sign up flow, and we say, congrats, now you are a member. So if we want to apply some kind of feeling of achievement that you have ended this flow, we could maybe add some animation. But if it's a button within a casual flow, you have to also think that user experiences the flow 10, 20 times. They click on the same button 20 times. If it will make them wait by having some frivolous animation, they would be more prone to be not to be happy about it. So that would be one example.
I can add something from Flutter point or application developer point, because before joining Wolt, I never worked with a motion designer, and I'm feeling very lucky to work with Masha. And when you invited me to this show, I said that okay, Masha should be here as well. Why? Because motion is usually considered just some small animations, but it has broader impact, and it really contributes to user experience, also to the brand. So we had many cases that we had interviews with candidates when we are hiring. They said that I use your app, your user experience is great. And what makes them say this is that all these small things, these small animations, that motions, that helps you, that guides you to understand what you are doing. It's like kind of a helping to recognition, like yeah.
I mean, I never really thought that you could use motion to kind of push people into different ways that you want to go, but to me, the motion and the animation is just something to make it look nice, but that's not true, right? You could actually use that to push people to certain places and have them
No.
kind of move along. No, am I misunderstanding?
No, you're right. You know how
Okay.
I call motion? I call it as a helping hand. So that helps the guide the user through the application. So that's like the part of motion that people don't usually notice. People notice our animations, they notice our tapping game, they notice all these micro interactions. But the biggest part of my work is actually creating a lot of behaviors of the screens and flows that are not noticeable, and that's their main goal. They guide you, they help you to get through one screen to another with a minimum cognitive effort, with as frictionless flow as possible. And that's kind of what I do, that probably people don't recognize in the very beginning if they're not familiar with the discipline. And the discipline is very, very new. I would say that there's not that many people that actually have specialize in that. Not to say that no one knows how to do it. If usually product designers do that, or actually software engineers do that. But I think now motion becomes a bit more significant to have its own place, at the table with all different people who contribute to the same application, for example.
Now, do you mind to kind of walk through the motions that guide people when using the modal sheet?
I can ask you one question, Ellen. We can go from that. For example, when we are switching between the pages, when you go to the next page, it comes from right to the left, but it can also come from left to the right. Which one would you choose and why? Have you ever thought about it?
I don't think at all.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So it's like from real life. And when Masha plans those things, she thinks about real life, because when you are reading a book has multiple pages, right? When you go to the next page, you use your finger, you swipe from right to left, and it tells to the user, okay, you are going to the next page. And if you press another button, and if it goes to the previous page, then it should come from left to the right, because this is nature, right? When you're reading a book, you use left to right. And also from scrollable, when scrolling, maybe Masha can tell this scrolling part. I took some role from his her. I stole
I
some
think
role.
it's a very good example you gave. Yeah, so the whole concept of the bottom sheet. So, you think of the bottom sheet, so it comes from the bottom, and then, for example, when you close it, it goes back to the bottom, so it slides down. So when it's open and there's more content within that you can scroll, it's also kind of natural. I think a lot of this logical thinking and the UX part of the whole experience is people relating to their real life. As Çağatay mentioned about reading a book and going to the next page, we take a lot of we take a lot of those impressions from the real life and we project them to using the application. So when you scroll long content, you basically just move it upwards. So you start scrolling and the more content will reveal itself. But for example, the button is always sticky because the button exists on kind of a different layer. So the button is on layer +1 on top of the layer. It's a sticky element, and we always want to have this button always visible. So of course, when we scroll, the button always stays there, and then the whole content scrolls.
I also would like to mention that the top bar gets visible when you scroll. And the top bar comes from top to down while you scroll from bottom to top. You use your finger from bottom and to top, and the top, when you push something up, another thing comes from down. So this is also very natural.
And I think also in your presentation you talk about the scrolling, right? There's a bounce. Is that right? I could have sworn, and when I went through the Google presentation, the Google slides, and I could have sworn in one of the pages you talk about the bounce when you scroll down and you're kind of like already at the bottom. Maria, are you okay? You look shocked, or am I just not seeing clearly?
Yes. Sorry, it's called this kind of a stretchy effect.
Oh, the stretch, yeah.
So
I call it the bounce
it's
because
kind of
it
also
moves, right? Because you
yeah.
pull it down and it bounces back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this way we indicate that you reach the end of the content, but we don't want, when you keep on scrolling all the way down, if it would stop abruptly, it would feel that it just, I think it just gives you a bit of this feeling like you stopped like to the dead end and that's it. So it's like almost like hitting your head to the wall. So by having this stretchy effect at the end, we show that okay, now you reach the end, so people can still attempt scrolling down, but we kind of don't give them we show that okay, you're trying to scroll down, we respond to your gesture, but there's nothing there. So that's why it goes back to the end of the content. And that's where the system is more of a like, I acknowledge you're trying to do something, but there's nothing else there.
We're so used to this already with so many things in Flutter, right?
Yeah,
but
there is this scroll effect.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to call it. Is that the right way to call it stretch? Is that how that actually you would call that?
I think this stretch comes by default with Android 13, that when you scroll, it stretches. It's coming from the operating system. I think this is already added in Flutter by default, but you can change probably that.
But there's slight differences between iOS and Android, right? When it comes to stretching.
And yep, you can, I think, set this in Flutter, giving some parameters.
I'd like to go back a little bit more to the modal sheet, right? Because I can imagine there may be some creative person, I guess I could say, that may use this for more than what they should, right? I mean, if you can have many steps in your modal sheet, but they're not really as closely related as they should be, like, do you have some guidelines on when people should use this and when they should not? I'm guessing Maria would probably be the expert in this one.
I think we did put some
Checklist.
cautions, like checklist, yes, when to use it. But I don't think that we placed of when it is not to use it. So something that I can, from the top of my mind is when it's a small flow, it's a few steps flow, and it might vary from 1 to 3 steps or something. And this is a flow that that all these pages within the flow, they're connected to each other with some logical meaning. I think it's fine to use it. But if it's a flow that the content is not connected at all to each other, when the flow has a very big significance, or C, if there's so many steps within the flow that the user might accidentally dismiss it by tapping outside of the model or bottom sheet. Maybe in those places you should try to find some other ways, some other, like either it would be like a full screen, or it would be like a stacked screen that comes from the right. So some other solutions would be preferable to use.
Ellen, I would like to share my screen again because this is very good or bad example about how not to use bottom sheets. Strava users, when they are working with the routes, they will understand what I mean. So this is the bottom sheet that comes when you are showing it. So I press here, save routes. If something is happening, but how do I go back here, for example? What is happening is that you lose the navigation control. But in our model sheet, our navigation control is always sticky, always there. You can go back. Ellen, can you imagine how you go back from here? You can press this X, right?
Press the X, or maybe pull.
But then pressing X should close the bottom sheet, right? But it is not closing the bottom sheet. Something else is happening here, right? And now I go to routes. Okay, something is happening here. Okay, now with so much information in here, it even suggests me start your free trial, but it gives me popular routes nearby, like, I don't know, and draw your own route or something. Now it's going to something totally different screen, like unlock this. And if you go to segments here, what is it? I'm lost in here. I press this one. I don't know what is happening in here. Oh, now there is more content, so I should maybe do this. And then again, like trying to like any surface or something. There is something else is popping on top of the bottom sheet, right? In our case, we don't show two model sheets on top of each other. We go to the next screen in here, and I do this. It is gone. Okay, now I'm lost again. What can I do in here? We always have these navigation controls in place, and they are simple. Do you understand how not to use model sheets? And here we have a checklist actually in my presentation. Maybe I can show it as well.
Sure.
Yeah. This is how I presented this in Flutter Competence. So in our design checklist, okay, think this about like our guidelines, because at Wolt, we use this component heavily in our consumer apps, in our merchant apps, in courier apps. They are implemented in React Native, native iOS, Android, and also in Flutter, but based on the guideline that is shared commonly according to Wolt design. There is also a design for models in Cupertino, also for Material. In our guidelines, we have some rules. For example, you should handle the scroll use case, but natural, like it should be very natural that you make it scrollable by default. As a user, you shouldn't be worried about it. The component provides you the built-in scrollability. And then also for example, imagine I showed you this Strava model sheet, right? There were 4 tabs, and each tabs, they were doing different things. They were opening a totally big screen, different screen. But when we have tabs in one model sheet page, we keep the height fixed because we don't want the user to be distracted by the height changes. Although the content is short enough, it should be, for example, it can be forced to max height so that when you switch between the tabs, they stay at the same height. When you're in the same page, you're not distracted with the content's height. Another thing is that seamless navigation. When I showed you this example with Strava, user was lost what to do. So we make sure that the navigation actions are sticky. We have sticky action bar in the bottom, and then we have navigation bars, close and back buttons in the top. So user should always be knowing that know that how can I go, what should be my next action. And also another thing is that design for different screen sizes. We should provide that because in large screen, in huge screens, showing a bottom sheet is bad. You can overcome with this two. You have two alternatives. One is that you can narrow the width of the bottom sheet, which is still not very common, or you can use a dialog. In our case, we chose to go to dialog, from bottom sheet to dialog, but it is very easy to go to side sheet if we really want. And last thing is that we should not overwhelm the user with complex tasks. Again, with Strava's roots bottom sheet, there were so much information, so many actions. It is really tiring for the user. Yeah, that's our guidelines. Maybe we should make them public.
Yes.
Maria likes that idea a lot. I think it's good. Because too many times we talk about like things that you can do, but not really much about things that you shouldn't do.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
sometimes that can be even more important about what you shouldn't do. I mean, Maria, you can probably say more than I can about this, but that's what usually
Welcome
comes
to
to my
Maria's
mind.
world.
Yeah.
When we have this bottom sheet public in our GitHub, there are already some issues and requests that can you add this, can you do this as well. So there will be more of this over the time, because I believe that this library is going to be very common because it solves a real life problem. I think it is a really big problem that I wanted to open source this. There were many people asking for this solution. Hopefully this will answer them. And as this library gets more popular, there will be some requests which might be not really good to have, like from design point. So we need to be really careful about what this library can do and should do.
Well, we got Maria back, so hopefully she's doing good.
I covered you.
You filled in for you
Thank you.
while you were reconnecting.
Okay, so I was just saying that there's so many ways of how you can display information or display content, and depending on what your application does and how the user goes through the flow, I think you need to think carefully of which elements you use to show it. So whether it's going to be a full screen page, whether it's going to be a bottom sheet or a model or a side panel, it's more about the why we need to show it this way and how we also show it systematically. So we reserve bottom sheets for some certain actions in our products. And if, for example, we create a new flow with a new feature, we think, okay, the user already thinks that the items open with the bottom sheet. So we will always open items with the bottom sheets. So I think the logical approach of how to show the content and the systematic approach of showing this content throughout the whole user journey is important.
Yeah, I agree with that. And on top of that, I would like to add that we still have really good enough customizability so that companies use or products using this model sheet can customize it according to their brand system. We are not there yet. We just released it, but we will have, for example, theme extensions. Uh, if the user wants, we can have flat borders, for example. And currently, we only support rounded borders, and also we don't provide theming. For example, the elevation color for the top bar is hard coded. But in the next releases, we will provide just enough customizability that doesn't conflict with the design guidelines.
Oh, that's good. So you have you that kind of brings me on to my kind of final thoughts and questions. Is it's kind of interesting. You don't have 1.0, you don't have 0.1, you have 0.004, right?
Yes.
So what's in the pipeline coming up, and is there going to be a 1.0 coming out at some point?
Yeah, this is a story actually going back to 2 years ago. When I first joined Volt, I was an Android developer. And at Volt, this kind of work is really important. Motion is really important. I spent 3 weeks just to animate correctly two tags. And I started working with Masha. She's laughing now. I Many other developers will be really annoyed. This is just freaking two chips. Why are we spending 3 weeks when they are and how they are getting visible to user? But once it is there for 2 years, same Android users are using the chips that I built. And there were so many alternative use cases. I remember Masha was talking to someone else, and that person said, well, Çağatay did it, I wouldn't do it. I just want to do it because I respect Masha. In my eyes, she is an artist and she wants to do her best. And as a developer, my responsibility is to help her deliver his work because I'm the one who is going to make it visible to the users. And for these 2 years, we started with very simple cases, and then as we expanded, as we added more features, we realized that okay, Flutter is evolving as well. We need to support more cases, and that's why we didn't release it 2 years ago. In these 2 years, we learned how to use this library externally, and then how its API should look like. And it has been just 2 or 3 weeks that it is out. It is not 1.0 yet because there will be breaking changes, because currently we only Volt is the user of it. But now we have we are battle testing our component. We are receiving issues. For example, I will just give you one very simple example. So we have this motion animation. As you scroll, the top bar gets visible, but you scroll vertically. But there was one user of this library who had a component in this page. The user was scrolling horizontally and top bar was still getting visible. So we never had a case that we had a component that it was scrolling horizontally and it was showing this top bar. So what we did, we had a bug fix. We only show this when you vertically scroll it. What I mean is that there will be breaking changes until we feel comfortable with 1.0 that okay, this is good enough. And what are the possible things as an improvements? As I mentioned before, there might be side sheets that is coming from the right in large screens, because currently it is very customizable. Users of this library can say at what screen constraints, what type of model should be shown. If it is, for example, smaller than a breakpoint, then a bottom sheet visible, larger than breakpoint, it is dialog, and if it is really large like ultra wide screen, maybe we should just show side sheet. So one thing. Another is that we don't have in our app now dark theme and light theme. That's why some values are hard coded, but we will add theme extensions for that. And also there are many things that you can do with this sliver logic, sliver magic, I would say. We will add more functionality that supports many different magic that you can do with slivers. So yeah, adding more extra things while we get feedback. So what I would suggest is that create issues. We will have our roadmap. This library can answer to your use case, hopefully.
Okay. That's pretty clear, and it's interesting to hear about kind of the history and where you're going with it.
Yeah, in the history, as I said, I feel very lucky to work with a motion designer, and it is not easy for motion designer as well, because the motion designer should convince people that we are going to spend 3 weeks on this, and it is needed. And Masha, can you maybe explain how you are convincing us?
It's true. I think, it's Çağatay said that my work is always a concept in the preview until it's coded. So my work never sees the light of day unless someone from engineers decide to spend their time and write some code for it, and for which I'm incredibly grateful, because this I can purely say that it's not just a concept I designed, but it's actually done a fully working product. And I believe that it's quite a challenge to convince uh, some stakeholders in terms of how much time we need to spend on it versus how much return of investment it brings. But there are few areas where I would be very firmly pressing on creating a very polished and custom motion if it's needed. Um, the biggest case would be you need to pick a flow that you usually is using every day in your application, and that flow needs to be flawless. It no matter from motion, design, everything, the whole experience needs to be flawless, because they're using it every day, multiple times. And if something is broken there and it gives twitch every time they're using, there's a much bigger chance that they will abandon it. And for some reason, motion is also considered to be used only for consumer products like our consumer app. I believe that for the business products, it's also very important in this case, because people are in a way forced to use it. They work at the company and the company decides to go with this product. So imagine if you can't switch, if you don't like Wolt, you can install some other application and get your food delivered as a consumer. But if you're working and this is your daily job and you have to do it for 8 hours, and something just triggers your nerves by just something that doesn't work, I think it's even worse. It just probably those people are not very um, visible, because they don't usually share the much feedback of the product. Um, yeah, maybe another consideration is, at least at Wolt, ever since I joined, so Wolt has been already a fully fledged company for several years before I joined. That came from the founders. So the founders believed in the experience, in different areas of experience. So we have this award to say, like we say that it's Wolt-grade. It's very interesting because no one exactly knows what Wolt-grade means, but I can give you some examples. If you use our application, everything works so smoothly. And then, for example, if something happens with your food, you contact the customer support, and customer support actually responds. And we have been praised for great customer support in our company. So we try to reach it as fast as possible and not just dismiss the user, giving them some extra credits or something. um, our courier partners, we also try to treat them the best way, even though they are freelancers. And the same goes for our business products. So whether it would be a merchant app or we have our own Wolt market applications, we try to deliver the best experience. And maybe motion wise, it kind of varies, of course, case by case, product by product. But we try to strive everywhere, for some fundamentals that should work everywhere, no matter what the product is.
Yeah. I also would like to add that food delivery in general, delivery is a very competitive business and you need to shine among competitors. And motion and this customer experience is one of the things that you can put your brand identity with these small things.
So that's why we have the Wolt modal sheet, right? Not just the modal sheet.
Yeah, it's the model sheet. It's Volt model sheet. It is not only because of that. The story, yeah, we could have kept this internally because it is very designed for Volt. We call it like Volt grade quality design. But why we wanted to open source it is a really different story as well, because um, my title at Wolt is a competence lead. I'm not a Flutter well, I'm developing Flutter app as well, but Flutter competence lead is larger than that. I have three responsibilities as competence lead. One is that internal activities, so that we have internal community in the company that they know Flutter is ready to use when needed. People can access to these learnings, tools, and also documentation how to use Flutter at Volt. We define some standards among new developers because we are scaling company. It's hyper growth, but at the same time, Flutter in the company is scaling from 2 users to 9 users, 10 users. It will be more. There will be more projects, maybe. So we need to be. My role is that making sure that internally we are ready for that. We are at the high level. And another role for competence lead is that making sure that we have great technical interview assessments so that we can hire best developers. And finally, external activities. We need to show to the world what we are proud of. So this library, this component works very well in our project. It solves real life problems, and we are proud to share this. We believe that we did this right, and with the battle testing in the community, it can be better. And why we want to do this again is that also attracting senior developers that can contribute to our project as well, because we started hiring like much long ago, and then we had many applications, but still we couldn't find what we are exactly looking for. Because what we were looking for is that we need to have people long years of experience with Flutter, but at the same time developing a software. But the problem is that Flutter doesn't have this long history, so it is hard to find people that has long software development history and then good Flutter knowledge. It is either people with long development experience with native or other software language frameworks, and then they started learning Flutter. And there is another kind of developer profile that there are many Flutter developers, but they don't have real life experience in scaling companies. So it is hard to find a combined, like very good, solid Flutter knowledge that can challenge our internal developers, that can put us to a better place. At the same time, knows how to work in a scaling company. Working in a scaling company is a totally different story. And this kind of activities makes you externally visible. So we start talking in the conferences. We contribute to the community by hosting meetup events in Berlin, in Helsinki, in our offices. Also, we share 2 open source libraries that we believe with a really good great quality and that can give sign to the developers who are looking for jobs that Wolt is very great place to work with. We solve real life problems here, and you can have great career here. Because I learned that if you want to attract senior developers as a company, you should contribute to the conferences by sponsoring them or host meetup events, and you should contribute to open source software. If I can ask you, can you give me 2 companies that is very very known for Flutter? What comes to your mind if I ask you?
I think Very Good Ventures comes up.
Yeah, and then next.
I have to think. Shorebird, I suppose.
Yeah, Shorebird and Invertase. Yeah, that makes these. For example, Remy works there, like makes provider, and Very Good Venture knows Block library. They have many open source projects. You know these companies, but you don't know about how they work, right? But you know that they are a good company because they are proud to show their open source projects, and this is why we want to show to the world that this is Wolt-grade quality. We work with great talented artists here like Masha, and we deliver quality stuff. Yeah, and we actually just today we had for example call with a candidate. He said that he applied because he saw our open source project. So this is how you can get the top talent and then a hub, like a Flutter hub in the market.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yes.
that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
this
I
is
agree. I was just thinking that it's, if you're proud of what you do and of the product of your build, I think that it attracts people also, and talented people get attracted because you want to be proud of your work. You spend a lot of time doing that, and I think this sense of achievement and just feeling that we're building something really good kind of brings a lot of people to our company.
Yeah, and we are using company times for open source project. The company is sponsoring indirectly, but actually the publisher name in pubdev is Wolt.com anyway. But the idea is that if we are open sourcing, it should be something that we are already using and we see the benefit and we are ready to show it to the world. So we just don't open source, like for example, fragment shaders and some other crazy stuff. You can do many crazy stuff with Flutter, but we are really solving here real life problems and we want to show to the world how we solve them.
So does this mean that we're going to see more and more packages from Wolt's side?
Yes, this is beginning. Actually, this is the second open source package. The first one was that Volt responsive layout. We shared this package once we solved our problem. We needed to have Flutter working with tablets, with large screens, and we needed to have a responsive design, and we shared it. And then another problem we tackled was that how to show the bottom sheet in large screens. So we have been working with bottom sheets for mobile phones, and we were developing it. We were making it better with adding multi-page support, this motion animation, everything. But one big problem is that how would it work in large screens? Once we solved that as well, and we believe that it is in Wolt-grade quality to share with the world, then we released it. And there are other projects that will come, but first we want to take it slow because open sourcing is a business. Open sourcing is a serious stuff. There will be many companies relying on your package. So if I put my name there, like Çağatay Ulusoy as a package owner, I would feel more comfortable. But if you put there Wolt.com, then I'm representing my company, and company is paying for me for these things, for activities. So we should be very careful for that. And once we learn how to maintain, because publishing a package is never only about publishing a code. You need to know how you can make space for external contribution. So you need to have for contribution guidelines. You need to have a template for PRs. So if you want to contribute, you should do it this way. And also a place for discussion. And also you need to be transparent about your roadmap. So it is more than just writing a code and sharing it. If I had my own personal side projects, I would be much more comfortable sharing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. There definitely is a lot to open sourcing things, like you said, besides just putting your code up online, right? Standing behind it, supporting it.
It takes a lot of time and effort, and currently we are learning how to tackle that. But also at the same time, seeing your name as a contributor is a great feeling. And we also shared a blog post. Maria wrote a great blog post about how we did it. But we also have our developers, internal developers who are contributing to the code, external developers as well. So it gives a space for you to grow in the company as well. Because when you are evaluated, your performance is evaluated. You're not only evaluated for your daily tasks, how you deliver it. If you want to go forward, you should do more impact. And we are just opening a space for our internal developers as well to create this impact. I became a Google developer expert after sharing a lot of knowledge with the community, giving talks. I joined your podcast before, so it helped me to be recognized as a Google developer expert. And now, as my role as Flutter Competence Lead is creating this opportunity for our internal developers as well.
For this the modal sheet. I understand the long-term vision, right? You still want to test out, you want to get more feedback, but is there any immediate like features that will be added in? Because you keep talking about, I guess one could be that side sheet. Is that actually going to for sure come on, or what else is like kind of coming up pretty soon?
Yeah, if I put the name there as a publisher Wolt.com, it should be everyone involved in this process. Masha and we have Scott, our designer, product designer. They put their vision to this product. So I cannot just take that, okay, I changed this design, I'm now adding a side sheet. It's very simple to do that, but we need to, again, present it with Wolt-grade quality. But so side sheet will come later probably, but the most urgent thing is that having team extensions so that companies can put their own brand and customize it and then present it to the user. For example, if the users use this with dark theme, the elevation color is hard coded and it looks really bad. Not to be able to optimize it. Also, if you don't have rounded widgets in your product, we hard coded these bottom sheets with rounded. Dialog is rounded, so we need to be able to make it customizable. Also, there are some other things too, but the priority is that first making it sure that people can put their own brand to the product. Other thing is that side sheet, and final thing is that they can still apply more sliver magic. Uh, you know what I mean by slivers, right? With scrolling, yeah. So with slivers you can do really crazy stuff, but currently we have our own embedded sliver solution. We need to make it more customizable.
Now, every time you're going to add in one of these features, you need to talk with somebody like Maria to kind of make sure that the motion is correct.
If motion is correct, yeah, I need to talk Maria, but from design point, because Maria is more motion designer, right, Maria? So I need to
Yes.
ask from our product designer that if I add a side sheet, how should it look like by default, and then users can customize it.
Is there anything else that we should really know about the modal sheet before we head off?
Nothing that comes to my mind. I just want to say that very grateful to our designers during this, because I really pushed hard to make this happen, and Masha was catching up with me. Like she's very busy because we don't have many motion designers at Volt, and Masha is like answering all the teams. And it's hard to get Masha not busy. So I just want to thank in front of all the audience Masha once more time.
I think in response, I would say that it's also thanks to engineers who actually want to spend their time and implement these crazy things that we design with designers. Because otherwise, I mean, it would be just a Figma, frame with some previews, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect symbiosis in our case. Everyone is very interested and eager to contribute to the work. Yeah.
Yeah. Ellen, I just want to add one more thing. This might seem easy to have pagination animation. It is very difficult with Flutter because you have two pages and they have different heights. And during the pagination, both pages should have the same height, And this is very difficult to do with Flutter because you cannot know the height of the page before laying it out. But when you lay it out and get the size information, it's already full, like it gets the height of the highest page. So there are many tricks that I applied, which can be many blog posts. For example, I used offstage widgets. Also, I did tree surgery. Do you know what tree surgery is? I'm not sure, but it is not a very common thing in Flutter, but it is doable using global keys, keeping the state of the widgets in the next build phase when you create the widgets. So there are so many details that took a lot of energy to implement. Also, we used very uncommon widgets for this motion, like flow widgets. It is provided by Flutter SDK. It gives you to work with widgets only in the paint phase. So you're not working on the build phase, not in the layout phase, but only working with the build phase. And also we used custom multi-child layout widget. It only allows you to work with the layout phase, not only build phase or painting phase. So this kind of details, each can be one blog post and one topic to discuss.
So does this mean we have more episodes to go for our sessions?
If you want, I'm more than willing to go deeper into technical details.
Again, I wanted to thank you guys for coming on, and thank you for being the guinea pig for this new format. And I hope that this will only get better with time.
Thank you for having us.